Hello folks, welcome back. Recently I've got an interest in a game about a robot running through hell with the spare change. You are correct, that's a particular thing I liked about it was the level design. Very diverse, but still coherent within the game's lore and mechanics. After finishing the last available level, let's say I had opinions. And as for the theme of me milking the tier list formula, I'm ranking all, released so far, ULTRAKILL layers by how much fun they were for me. Yippee! Criteria are loose and subjective, but just so you know what I'll be looking at, it is the visuals, the gameplay, the soundtrack and the lore. We are not wasting any more time, let's ULTRAKILL! Grid is arguably one of the worst layers to be released so far. It has two open space levels that tend to be on the weaker side of ULTRAKILL designs. Soundtrack is good on its own, but it also pales in comparison to other tracks this game has to offer. A thing that I realized while writing this script is that I don't even remember playing it that much, although it might be the layer that I spent the most time in. In my opinion, it lacks identity, something that would get into my memory, anything from gameplay, visual or sound design. One good track, like from 4-2, is not enough, especially when the competition is this fierce. The fact that it is the worst pack of levels from all available doesn't mean it's bad on its own. It has redeeming features, like the V2 boss fight with its crazy chase sequence, a fun secret level, and the giant corpse of Sisyphus giving you this sense of grandness. I'm sure he won't be relevant later in the game. Unfortunately, these assets are not enough to make up for everything that is just meh about Grid in comparison to any other layer. Anakin Skywalker would agree. C tier. From the scorching sun of Grid to the deep blue of Wrath, it is here where you learn how to use the whiplash. I have somewhat similar feelings about Wrath as I had with our previous contestant. It has some neat secrets and also had more than just one open world level. I may not like Wrath, but what I can't deny about it is its fire soundtrack. Just listen. This time I am also aware that my bad experience was indeed because of my skill issue. When replaying it with proper usage of the whiplash, it is much more enjoyable, but alas, some layers have to be in the bottom tiers. B tier. Whilst traversing the bridge burner for the first time, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we fought this guy? Holy shit, we're fighting this guy! Despite 2-2 and 2-3 not being outstanding, I still think that overall Last was a better experience than Grid and Wrath. While the 4th and the 5th layer are surely more repairable, it is hard for me to ignore how exploring a city built by King Minos felt. Also, the intro to this place is so goddamn good! The color scheme of Last is a thing I'm very fond of. That, with above average soundtrack, makes for a very satisfying experience, if not for the gameplay itself. As I already mentioned, the two middle levels are not very good. They are very confusing to navigate, contain bullshit, and if not for the artistic dimension that it offered, it might have just resulted in me dropping the game. B tier. I'm pretty meh about this layer. 3-1 is the first significantly longer level that ULTRAKILL has to offer, and I don't think it's neither good nor bad. It is just longer than the previous ones. Besides that, it is a pretty standard experience. I value the disgust that it induced in me. It means that the visuals work as intended. You run around killing enemies, and then you hear him.
Machine, turn back now.
The angel.
The layers of this palace are not for your kind.
The savior.
Turn back, or you will be crossing the will of God.
Gabriel, the judge of hell.
The power of an angel!
Let's get real, Gabriel is the only reason why Gluttony is not at the bottom. B tier. Some of you might be very surprised to see the prelude here, as it is not popular at all. It does not have almost any interesting visual ideas, the soundtrack is just fine, and it has zero to none enemy variety. But there is one thing that elevates the prelude in my eyes. It is easily one of the best tutorials I've ever played. It is safe to assume that during my first playthrough it was the most enjoyable out of every layer. I know it's technically not a layer, but in every other sense than lore, it is, so let's just go with that. Unfortunately, if I'm staying true to my criteria, I cannot rank it higher. Also, it's the first place in which we see Mauricio! Oh my precious! A tier for Mauricio. Holy shit, I love Limbo. From the visual idea of CRT monitors being the sides of the arena, to it being a great introduction to the game's mechanics, Limbo is truly one of my favorites. It somewhat subverted my expectations. After defeating the Cerberus, you descend into hell, just to be found in some sort of paradise. Of course, the illusion is broken pretty fast, but the initial impression stays. This layer shows very well what ULTRAKILL is, and in my opinion, it succeeds in selling it to you, by having the first pack of not just orb secrets, by being a significant but not an overwhelming difficulty bump in comparison to the prelude, and by giving you the first real boss fight. The V2 fight is very interesting, as it is the first time that an enemy actively dodges you, sort of mimicking your gameplay. Easy to say, Limbo was the layer that finally sold me on ULTRAKILL and made me go through the whole thing. And let's not forget about the soundtrack. It keeps up with the pace, for example changing itself for the burned Limbo section. It's literally and figuratively fire. A tier. Heresy follows the same pattern that has been shown already. It is a two-stage layer with a very long first level and a Gabriel fight in the second one. But let's start with one other thing that demands to be talked about. The soundtrack. I don't think there is anyone that would argue about Heresy's soundtrack not being the best in the whole game. That opinion seems to be widespread among ULTRAKILL players. It is everything that was great about all the previous tracks turned up to even higher levels of badassness. What complements it is the massive build-up that we get. Solid minutes with buzzing as the only sound for that to happen. It is a straight up spiritual experience. 0-1 is fittingly one of the most demanding levels available for now. Trying to peace rank it is a significant challenge that only the most dedicated players will finish. The next level is easy in my opinion, but its value does not lie within the difficulty, it lies within the atmosphere. Both the soundtrack and the voice acting create a spectacle that makes you really feel that something grand is happening, with a true duel beside it. Gabriel has a cult-like following, and this level accurately shows you why. S tier. Even if I hated violence, I wouldn't be human if I put it anywhere lower than the S tier. From visual ideas being easily the best in the whole game, to soundtrack that is barely a little bit short of greatness of the Heresy, violence is undoubtedly the best layer, period. Violence consequently subverts expectations right from the start. When you finish Heresy, with red being the only color on its palette, you go even deeper to see a clean, radiating with its whiteness palace. It is not clean anymore. And of course this place is not a palace. It is a labyrinth that hosts this horrible creature thrown down by Minos. In 7-2 Light Up the Night we go into another banger level idea that is about traversing a war-torn city in which we have to detonate a fucking nuke to progress further. Also, there are some massive machines on the horizon. I wonder how it would be to fight them. 7-3 on the other hand looks like a consequence of war, with its graveyard and a creature that demands to be fed. Gameplay wise it might be the weakest out of 4 levels of violence, but it is still above average. Its greatness comes from the atmosphere that both the visuals and the soundtrack help to build. 7-4 as the boss level is a cherry on top. It's the third and probably last colossal boss enemy, the Earth Mower, the moving fortress. When you approach it, it is not a war cry that you hear. However big this machine is, and however small V1 is, the Earth Mower seems to know which one of you is the superior one. Remember, every machine built by man was to counter the previous one. And the last machine built by the mankind is, you guessed it, V1. The Earth Mower is scared for its life. S tier. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm grateful for every one of you, and I promise I won't disappoint. Also, big thanks to my 3 members. I love you! Everyone that becomes a member gets a kiss on their forehead.